Representative.
We're joined now on Zoom by former United States Representative from Illinois from 2011 to 23, Adam Kinzinger. You, of course, will remember he's one of the two Republican members of the House committee which investigated the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol. Congressman, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for your time.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
we much appreciate your time. We much appreciate your work on the January 6th committee along with Congresswoman Liz Cheney. So it looks like Donald Trump is going to do really well up here. We don't know, of course. New Hampshireites are often not following what the polls predict. But in any case, if Trump does do well, what do you make of it? Why are people still so ardent and in love with this guy?
I mean, look, if he wins, I think wins it all, frankly, this primary's over. I mean, you can almost say it is now if you look at the polls, but of course we need to wait till the votes come in. You know, a lot of the polls aren't taking into account independents. How do you measure those? And there's a big push on that. But look, I mean, it's in fact, I put out an article today on my Substack just talking about, I said, it's a cult. Like the reality is it's a cult. But I go into more depth about at a time when people feel so isolated, they look for a sense of community. And the one thing MAGA does is it brings that sense of community to people, but it also punishes outsiders. If you walk outside of this like straight and narrow cultish path, you get ostracized and you get used as an example. Such to the point that Donald Trump doesn't even really have to discipline people anymore. It's all done within the system. So what you have is this fear, particularly among leaders, that they're going to be left aside or pushed out. And there's this like urgency to jump on the Trump train. And of course, momentum leads to momentum. I think that's part of it. We could get into the depth of the character of Trump and why that's attractive to people. But I think on the top line, a lot of it starts with that just desire for tribal identity that's leading people down this path.
You know, but most people I know are not attracted to sexual abuse, and I thought Mitt Romney showed a lot of courage the other day, not just criticizing Trump for the civil finding in the E. Jean Carroll case that he had sexually abused her, but criticized voters, which people in politics are wont to do. He said, essentially, I don't understand why this doesn't matter to them. And I have to say, I don't understand why this doesn't matter to them either, no matter how enamored of the candidate they are, Congressman.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And I guess if I had to try to explain in what I know how some of these folks think, it's that no longer does policy matter. I mean, frankly, Donald Trump could come out tomorrow for Ukraine or against Ukraine, and they'll all follow because what they like is that he ticks off their enemies. He makes their enemies mad. And so while most of us normal folks are upset that he sexually abused somebody, they look at that and say, well, if Adam Kinzinger is upset, that means it's a good thing because I don't like Adam Kinzinger. It's this like upside down world we live in at the moment, and we just have to hope the fever breaks, but I just don't think it's going to break anytime soon.
You know, I'm not telling tales out of school, but we broadcast live most of the January 6 hearings of your committee, and since we said it on the air when you weren't here, we thought they were extraordinary and of unbelievable importance to this country and our history. But Marjorie and I kept saying on the air, what's the impact of these hearings going to be on the MAGA crowd? And I hate to say this, but it's pretty clear to me as of today, the impact of those lengthy, detailed, meticulously organized hearings on Trump supporters is none. Is that your unfortunate take on this too?
Yeah, I think it's right. Look, I think there's a number of people to blame in that. Obviously, Donald Trump is the ultimate, person to blame, and he tries to convince everybody he's a victim of everything. He's the weakest, whiniest American I know, quite honestly. But the second tier is not just Donald Trump; it's every one of those Republican elected officials that stood on the stage of the debate and said they would support him. And when they were asked directly about his indictments, they would find a way around that and never answer the question. So Republican voters who trust a certain tier of people look at all these tiers of people saying, oh no, Donald Trump's a victim. And so they come to believe he's a victim. I will say, while it didn't have an impact on the MAGA base, I certainly think it had an impact on the DOJ investigation. But more broadly, I truly believe that in 10 years, there's not going to be a single person, this is my hope, but I believe it, there's not going to be a single person that will ever admit in polite company that they supported Donald Trump.
We're talking to Adam Kinzinger, former congressman from Illinois and former member of the January 6th committee.
But you know, watching you on TV and Liz Cheney day after day and the other members of the committee and thinking wrongly that this was really going to matter, unlike other things that didn't matter, dissing John McCain, dissing a Gold Star mother, all those things that the president did, so you can grabbing women by the whatever. Tell us about just what this has been like for you. I mean, you were on the committee, Republican on the committee. I know I've heard you talk about death threats even against your children. I mean, this has not been an easy transition for you, I would think.
No, and it's interesting. Over the last year, since I've been out, I've really been able to kind of take inventory as to the impact. Because when you're in the middle of it, it's almost like being in the middle of a war. I mean, nobody has PTSD, during a war. It comes after when you think about it. You're just surviving, you're operating. And so over this last year, I've taken inventory at the damage. I mean, there were family impacts, not my immediate family, but extended family disowned me when I, voted to impeach Donald Trump. They called me a member of the Devil's Army. That's why I say it's a cult, by the way, because they put that out there. But, my co-pilot from Iraq, for instance, who sent me a text once and said he was ashamed to have ever flown with me because we have a different political opinion. I mean, so yes, it has an impact, but I'll tell you, over the last year, it's also made me kind of double down in saying we have to fight this. I can thrive on conflict sometimes, and I think in this case I am. I've been able to take inventory of the impact, but I just recognize that, while I'm a public figure that can show kind of the impact it's taken, there's not a single person listening right now that can't name one relationship that's been broken because of Donald Trump and MAGA. And this is an epidemic that we have to take on together. And that's
We
been
get it from couples
commitment.
who've split up all the time over this issue.
Sure.
Congressman, just a thing more or two. I know I've read you say that if it's Trump versus Biden, you're vote for Biden, former Republican congressman. Could you support Nikki Haley as the nominee of your party?
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know. Like, the big thing for me is I want people that are going to tell the truth. And while Joe Biden and I don't agree on everything, I think he's a truth teller, and I think he believes in democracy. That's the most important part. We'll cross that bridge if I get there, but it looks like it's going to be Trump and Biden, and there's not a chance in blazes I could support Donald Trump.
Okay, and last thing related to that, the Governor Sununu, maybe the biggest Haley supporter clearly here in New Hampshire, and Haley herself, while he has been very critical of Trump and she's been modestly critical, both say if he's the nominee that they'll vote for him. How does that hit you?
I mean, it's sick. I mean, I guess, look, I'll give Haley the benefit of the doubt in saying she almost has to say that to be relevant. I don't excuse it or agree with it, obviously, and we'll see what happens when and if she drops out. With the governor, Sununu, I don't understand it at all. And it's not like when he answered that question, he was introspective and downtrodden about it. He was excited. Like, he almost gave the perception that he would be excited to vote for Donald Trump. Of course I'd vote for Donald Trump. That's what bothered me more than anything. I get the politics of it, but you don't have to celebrate it. And for God's sakes, I would hope that if Nikki Haley drops out of this race ever, that he would make the right decision, but he seemed pretty stoked to support Donald Trump if that was his option.
Congressman, your service on that January 6th committee was really an important moment in our history, and we're thrilled that you joined us today. Thank you so much for your time.
It was great to be with you. Thank you. God bless.
Thank
Be
you.
well.
We've been speaking with Adam Kinzinger, served as a United States Congressman from Illinois from 2011 to 2023, and he was a Republican member of the House committee that investigated the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol.